Hey, welcome back to Shop Talk. My name is Eric, and today we're going to talk about people that have asked me, how do I convert my 6-volt tractor over into 12 volt? And what are some of the reasons that you would want to do that? So, let's start with reasons why you'd want to do that. 12 volt will spin that over quicker, and it will start faster and easier, and you'll get better battery life in the end. That's the biggest reason. And if you were to take it to a normal shop, what would it cost to do that? And we always figured $250 to $300, and that's with us buying the alternator and the customer buying the battery, 12 volt, and the customer paying for the coil and any bracket material. So in the end, it could cost you $300-400 to get it converted over. So what do you do as far as how to convert it over to 12? All right. The first thing you want to do is start stripping stuff off. What we do is you're going to have a generator, is what they call it. It used to be rebuildable, but there's hardly anybody around that rebuilds them. And that's in charge of the charging system. And when they go try to find another generator, but alternators are being produced every day. So we take the generator and snip the wires close. And what we do is we fold the wires over with no ends exposed, and we just tape it up and take the whole whip and take it back somewhere where it's out of the way and twist tie underneath the dash of the tractor, just so it's out of the way. Why do we do that? Because if there's ever a point that the customer sells the tractor and somebody wants to take it back to restoration quality of the generator, and it's all there. You just got to hook into it. Alright, so snip the wires, fold it up, put it underneath the dash. Take the generator, loosen the brackets, take it off. Set it in a box to give to the customer. Or if you're the one doing it yourself, it's scrap iron as far as I'm concerned, but your choice. Once we have that off, then we jump over to the other side, and you're going to want to go with a 12 volt coil with an internal resistor. Now, you can run your system with an external resistor but it's only going to be good for just the starting system. So what we highly recommend is go with 12 volt internal resistance coil. I call it the IR. So when you go to your local auto body shop or you're searching online, look for an internal resistant coil, not just a coil, an internal resistance coil. Alright, so we take the 6 volt coil, take it off, put the 12 volt coil with internal resistor and hook it in. Alright, if it's got an external resistor, usually it's a white piece on the side, take that right off. You don't need it. And then from there, you're going to order a brand new 1-wire GM alternator. It's got to be a 1-wire. And why has it got to be a 1-wire? Because if you go with a 2-wire, now you have to have a way to excite the alternator. And the only way you could do that would be if you had an accessory switch on your key, where you had accessory and then start. But good chances are, if you don't, you're going to end up draining your battery dry. And wondering why it's not charging. So you're going to run from, and we'll show that more in depth towards the end. I'm going to have the camera on one of my mechanics finishing it up because we got the alternator in yesterday. So you're going to want to build brackets and mount that alternator so that you can reuse the belts and for the flywheel, or the flywheel with the fan wheel fan. And then you're going to run the one wire off the alternator back to the battery so it's charging. So is there anything that you have to do to that tractor when you convert it to 12? And there is. Headlights. Most of the headlight bulbs are 6 volt. If you energize that with a 12 volt, it's going to blow the bulbs. But right on eBay, or even your local auto parts, they sell the 12 volt plug-in headlights that go on the front of your tractors. Most of them come either with an idiot light or an amp meter gauge. We switch it over to volts only so that you can see where it is, because it's going to be putting out 60 to 70 when it first starts, and then as the battery gets more charged, fully charged, it'll start coming back down. Now if you want to run your amp meter gauge, that's fine, because then the amp meter gauge is just going to be pegged until your battery is fully charged while you're running, and then you might see it slowly come back towards the middle. But it's going to peg to not overcharging, but more than what that amp meter gauge is going to tell you. I think it's a 30 amp. Because the one wire GM alternator puts out more than 30 amp, puts out 60 some amps. But you can still reuse that. Your fuel gauge, your temperature gauge, all that shouldn't be affected in your system. So in reality, the only thing that you need to change are your headlight bulbs, or if you got bulbs in the rear that are 6 volt. So today we're going to be building brackets, mounting the alternator, wiring the alternator up, and then checking the system to see, is it charging, how good is it charging. And right now we don't have the right size battery, so we're going to have a battery sitting on the fender well so that we can at least show you what it's going to look like until we can get the customer to bring in the right battery, or to get the right battery and drop it off with us. It's not that difficult. You do have to have some mechanical skills and tools, but I think if you sat down and just watched, and like I say, Claude's pretty good at explaining of what he's doing, you can do it. The only thing I'm going to advise is during this video, he does tend to swear a lot if he gets upset with something, and I may have to bleep it all out, but we'll go from there. Alright, so let's get right into the video. So what you have here is the alternator. This is the one that we just got off eBay. It's a one wire, and we were able to use the bottom brackets. The lighting is poor out here. The old brackets bolted in there, and now we have to build something so that this one that goes from here to here has a lip that goes sideways, so it will bolt up to it and attach to that. So that's what we're doing right now, is we're getting some stock steel so that we can cut and make our bracket so that it will tighten up the alternator. And you can see we reused the same belt. It comes with a 1/2 inch pulley. So like we were talking about earlier, you can see that we reused the old bracket that held the generator. And then there's a threaded bolt that we were able to go into one of the eyelets. And from there, we end up building, this is the old one, and we've had to add stock steel to bring it across so that we have something that we can tighten it with. So the only thing you're going to have coming off that alternator is this one wire. And you got to make it a heavier gauge because you're putting out 60 amps. And that's going to go all the way back to the battery. This piece of right here with all these wires, this was the old generator. We just snipped them off and run the one wire. We didn't replace the starter. You don't have to. On this, the fuel gauge, temperature, and oil do not have to be replaced. This one has an idiot light for the charging system. So that light will go out once it starts charging. Nothing else has to be replaced. This is what the generator looks like. And that produces power back to the battery. This is the old 6-volt coil. Oh, let's go this way. On this side of the tractor, let me get the lights. Okay, so on this side of the tractor, we have the coil, and the coil is an internal resistor. You just run the one wire over here to the distributor, and the other wire back through to the switch. You do not have to change points of condensers. You don't have to change anything on this. Like I say, you just put in a 12-volt internal resistant coil. Here's the wire that's coming off the alternator. The battery is going to sit here, and this is going to hook to the battery to charge the battery up, keep it charged up. Again, the only thing that you're going to have to replace are headlights, if you had headlights. This one here doesn't. This one here is where the emblem goes. So in this case, we don't need to change anything. It hasn't got front or rear lights. So hopefully that's kind of helped you understand that it's not that complicated to go ahead and change it over from 6 to 12. And like I say, the biggest reason most people switch them over is because the generator goes bad and it's not charging the tractor. And try to find a rebuilt generator or get your generator built is hard. You've got just the one wire coming off the alternator. If you get the one with the 2 wire, you're going to screw yourself. And
because the second wire is the exciter. It has to get power from the battery to the alternator to excite it to start charging the unit. The other thing that we were looking at get the lights here. Right here, I don't know if you can see it. We were sitting here working on putting the alternator in, and we noticed that there was some antifreeze coming from somewhere. And somebody has, at one time or another, patched this block. And a little piece come loose. So we're just going to go ahead, clean it up, put JB Weld on it, or DevCon, one or the other, and that'll solve that. And that'll get this tractor out of here and make us a few bucks. Again, this is a Ford 2000. Same idea with the 8Ns, 9Ns, Jubilees. It's all basically the same. You have to replace the coil, whether it's a front mount distributor with a top mount coil. Just get a 12-volt internal resistant coil and mount it on there. Again, everything else is the same. You just make a wire from the alternator over to the battery, the positive side, so that it's putting juice back into the system. Everything else stays the same but your lights.
So I know the lighting was hard out there to see stuff. And I tried speeding up the video because Claude was spending more time building brackets than anything, because you're going to have to find some stock steel and do some welding to get everything to line up, because you want to have your pulley on your alternator, it needs to be pretty much straight across for the belt so that it's not coming off all the time. Again, it's not that complicated. Snip the wires off the generator, coil them up, get them out of your way. Take the generator off, toss it. Use the brackets that are there. Order a 1-wire GM alternator. Use your front bolt part where your generator sat, and it threads into the alternator. That'll get it so that it's staying like this, where it's movable. And then all you have to do is, the old bracket that went from the generator to the block wasn't long enough, and it's never long enough, so you end up having to build something. Now you can buy all this stuff in a kit. I've seen them, different ones that are putting everything together, and they make it more work than it really needs to be. If you can weld, that's all you need, some stock steel. Nothing else changes except for the light bulbs on it. That if they're 6-volt, you need to get 12-volt if you want to have use of the lights. The other thing that we've been doing is with the amp meter gauge, you can leave that there. Most of them come with a 30 amp. The only thing it's going to do is it's going to be pegged for a while until that battery gets almost fully charged, and then you'll see it coming down. But it's going to be pegged past plus 30 because the alternator is putting out 60 plus amps. Some of our customers like to see where it is all the time, and then that's just simply putting in a volt gauge, to see. They can see it physically within the realm of where it needs to be. So, and then with the crack block, depends on where the crack is and how it's affecting the tractor. Now, we could see that years ago somebody had an issue with that block where it had cracked. And my guess is that they didn't winterize it, and they had more water than antifreeze in it, and the water froze. And with the water freezing, it expands, and it will crack your block. They did, or they got somebody else to do it, to put a patch on it. So what we're going to do, since it is running good, what we're going to do is just simply take some JB weld and apply it to that, because you got to clean it up first, but then apply the JB weld and let it set up. Or the other product that we use in the shop a lot is what's called Defcon. And I'm familiar with that because when I was working in a mill at a mining company, we went through a lot of this stuff, and it is hard as hard. And we used it mainly on elbows where sand and grit and everything were flowing through with water. We needed a product that was strong enough to withstand the beating that the elbow, usually about a 6 or 8 inch elbow, was taking. And by putting the Defcon, we had some of the hard rock we could add to it to harden it even more durable. But that's all there is to going from a 6 to a 12. And the only reason to go from a 6 to a 12 is usually if the generator is no longer working, it's not going to charge your battery, and the cost of getting a generator rebuilt or finding one that's in decent shape is harder and harder today, where your GM alternator, one wire on eBay, I think is running right around 80 bucks, 70 to 80 bucks. And yeah, you're going to have to put a new battery in it because you're going to have to go from 6 to 12. A new internal resistant coil, some wire, a little bit of work on the bracket, and you're done. Or you can buy the kits that are out there and do all the gauges and all your other stuff. But that's totally up to you and how much time you want to put into that tractor. So on that note, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching.